Yes, hello, my name is Svein Solberg and I am leading the work package number 5. And in this work package, we will identify forest management options for forests in Europe with attention to two important things. One is the trade-off or the balance between different ecosystem services. And the second is to consider resilience against climatic stress. So take the next slide, please. So what we do this year is that we spend most of the time, I would say, outdoors in the forests around Europe. We are traveling around Europe, visiting certain forest types, and we are then discussing forest management options in the field. So partly in groups, as you can see here, because we have stakeholder categories, 5 groups altogether. And also we have plenary sessions where we discuss also. What are we discussing? I mean, if we can start, let's say, with a simple question. What tree species should we use in Europe in the coming years? Should we use, for example, spruce, like you see here? Or should we replace the spruce with oak, for example? Or should we in general switch from conifers to broadleaf trees? And perhaps you believe that we should, in general, stop using spruce and start using broadleaf trees. Firstly, because spruce is largely introduced in large parts of Europe, and it typically forms like even-aged monocultures. They are not very nice for recreation, maybe. They are so dark that there is little ground vegetation, so the biodiversity can be low. And if you take the next slide, please. And also we have seen in Europe the last years enormous areas of dead spruce forests because of drought and bark beetles. So perhaps the answer to my initial questions should be evident that we should definitely replace spruce or conifers by broadleaves like oak, but it's not that easy. So firstly, if you go to the Nordic countries like Finland, Sweden and Norway, spruce and pine are the natural tree species. They're not introduced here. So if we change from those conifer species into broadleaves, that means a big change in the landscape in our countries. Secondly, if we compare these two species as I introduced you with, spruce and oak, we know that spruce forest can take up twice as much carbon from the atmosphere as an oak forest. So the spruce is twice as effective as oak and most broadleaf tree species in mitigating climate change. Thirdly, the oak trees are very popular among deer and moose, for example. They are heavily browsed. So if we want to raise, let's say, oak forests at the expense of spruce, we will need to fence large forest areas to avoid browsing, which will be quite expensive. And also, if you compare those tree species, spruce has another advantage. You can grow an old and mature spruce forest in as little as 40 years. It's a quite short rotation. While if we plant an oak forest, we will need 150 years. And let's say the risk for climate disturbance in forests is always there. And the longer the rotation time is, the higher is the risk that we get a complete breakdown of a forest because of some climatic disturbance. So spruce has the advantage of a higher turnover or quicker rotation age. And finally, the forest owners, they earn more money on spruce, and the forest industry, they prefer spruce and pine. So it's not so easy for the forest owners to make money on broadleaves in general. and the forest industry is not so interested in that. And as you know, we also should, in a climate change setting, try to let's say, replace steel and concrete in buildings, for example, by wood. So having a high wood productivity is also important, and that favors the coniferous trees and spruce and pine. So take the next image, please. Yeah. So the answer is really tricky to find out what is the best option for forest management in Europe. And just to show you, this is from a very dense spruce stand. So in this case, we have 800 cubic meters per hectare of high quality spruce. So this is a planted monoculture. However, as you can see, there is some green in the bottom here. It's quite nice to walk here. It's very cooling atmosphere in a warm day. And in this case, we also saw a goose hawk nest in this forest. So there is some biodiversity, there is some recreational value, even in a monoculture, even-aged spruce stand. Yeah, so the question is not so it's not so easy to find the best forest management options. And altogether, the important thing for us in this work package is to bring together, as you can see here, stakeholders from different categories: forest owners, forest industry, biodiversity, forest recreation, and also forest officers representing the governments, to have the different views and the different preferences for forest management, and trying to combine that into, let's say, good options for future management of our forests. And yeah, I think I just stop there. Thank you. And I give the floor to the next speaker.